name is David. I want to warn everyone reading this story. Do not enter the abandoned tunnel in the city. Not long ago, I ignored this warning, and my life changed forever. One night, my friends and I were telling scary stories. Mike mentioned an old tunnel outside the city. According to legend, people who get lost in this tunnel never return. What Mike was saying seemed silly to me. I boasted, "I'm not scared. I'll go into the tunnel." The next evening, we met at the entrance of the tunnel. I turned on my flashlight and stepped into the dark depths of the tunnel. A cold wind hit my face, and the damp smell from the tunnel made my stomach turn. As my steps echoed, I heard my friends' mocking laughter behind me. As I moved further into the tunnel, the air grew colder. There were old graffiti and rusty metal pieces on the walls. The light from my flashlight wasn't enough to illuminate the end of the tunnel. I felt a strange unease inside, but turning back would hurt my pride. After a while, I noticed old wooden doors embedded in the tunnel walls. I opened one, and the cold air and the smell of something rotten pushed me back. Just as I was about to close the door, I heard whispers from inside. I looked back. My friends were far away. "Who's there?" I called out, but there was no response. Suddenly, my flashlight flickered and went out. In a panic, I shook it, and it turned on again, but with a weak light. I continued forward, but my footsteps were no longer the only ones echoing. I could hear a second pair of footsteps coming from behind. "Mike? Is that you?" I shouted, but there was no answer. The footsteps were getting faster. I started to run, but the end of the tunnel was nowhere in sight. After a while, I was out of breath and had to stop. I looked back. There was no one there. But then I realized I wasn't alone. A cold hand from the depths of the tunnel touched my shoulder. When I turned around, I saw a decayed face with hollow eyes. I screamed and ran until I found the end of the tunnel. When I emerged, my friends looked at me in shock. I didn't say anything. I just walked away. Since that day, I've never gone back to that tunnel. You shouldn't either. Some things cannot be explained, and no one knows what awaits in that tunnel. My name is Daniel. I always loved exploring abandoned places, but this one adventure changed my perspective forever. One rainy afternoon, my friend Ethan and I stumbled upon an old railway tunnel in the outskirts of town. It was hidden behind overgrown bushes and barely visible from the main road. Our curiosity got the better of us, and we decided to explore it. As we stepped inside, the sound of raindrops faded, replaced by an eerie silence. The tunnel was long and dark, with rusted tracks running along the ground. Our flashlights barely penetrated the thick darkness ahead. The air was damp and cold, sending shivers down my spine. We walked for what felt like hours, talking quietly to ease the tension. Suddenly, Ethan stopped and pointed his flashlight at something on the ground. It was an old leather-bound journal, covered in dust and mold. He picked it up, and as he did, a cold draft blew through the tunnel, extinguishing our flashlights. In total darkness, we fumbled with our flashlights until they flickered back to life. When the light returned, we saw that the journal was open, displaying a page with hurried, scribbled handwriting. It read, "Do not go further. Turn back now." Ignoring the warning, we pressed on, curiosity pushing us forward. The tunnel seemed to stretch endlessly, the air growing colder with each step. Our conversation died down, replaced by the echo of our footsteps. Then we heard it, a faint, rhythmic tapping coming from the darkness ahead. It sounded like metal striking stone, growing louder as we advanced. Ethan and I exchanged nervous glances but continued. The tapping intensified, accompanied by a low, haunting hum that resonated through the tunnel. Suddenly, we reached a dead end. The tunnel was blocked by a collapsed wall of rubble. The tapping had stopped, replaced by an oppressive silence. As we turned to leave, the hum grew louder, almost deafening. Panic set in, and we ran back the way we came, the tunnel seemingly endless. The hum followed us, growing louder and more frantic. Just as we thought we would never escape, we saw the faint light of the tunnel entrance. We burst out into the rainy afternoon, collapsing on the wet ground, gasping for breath. We never spoke of what happened in that tunnel again. The journal was lost in our frantic escape, but its warning remained etched in our minds. To this day, I avoid dark, enclosed spaces, haunted by the memory of that eerie, abandoned tunnel. My name is Zoe. Megan and I had always been thrill seekers, looking for the next big adventure. We heard about an old tunnel system beneath the city that was rumored to be haunted. Naturally, we had to check it out. One evening, just before sunset, we found the entrance hidden behind an old, dilapidated building. Armed with flashlights and a map we found online, we entered the tunnel. The air was musty, and the walls were covered in moss and grime. Our footsteps echoed eerily as we ventured deeper. The map indicated that the tunnel system was extensive, with many branching paths. We decided to take the main route first, which supposedly led to an underground lake. As we walked, we noticed strange symbols and markings on the walls, some of which looked ancient. Megan joked about how they looked like something out of a horror movie, but I could see the unease in her eyes. After about an hour of walking, we reached a large, open cavern. The underground lake was there, just as the map had shown. The water was still and dark, reflecting the beams of our flashlights. We took a moment to rest, sitting on the cold, damp ground, listening to the distant sound of dripping water. Suddenly, we heard a splash. Both of us jumped to our feet, shining our flashlights towards the lake. There was nothing there, just ripples disturbing the otherwise calm surface. "Probably just a rock," Megan said, trying to sound confident, but we both knew there was no one else around to throw it. We decided it was time to head back. As we retraced our steps, the tunnel seemed different, more oppressive. The air felt colder, and the silence was heavier. We reached a fork in the path that we didn't remember seeing before. Confused, we took what we thought was the right way. But the tunnel only seemed to twist and turn, leading us deeper into the darkness. After what felt like hours, we stumbled upon an old, rusty gate blocking our path. Beyond it, we could see faint lights flickering. Megan managed to pry the gate open just enough for us to squeeze through. As we stepped inside, we found ourselves in a small room lined with old lanterns, some still faintly glowing. In the center of the room was an old wooden table with a single, dusty book on it. Curiosity got the better of us, and we opened the book. The pages were filled with handwritten notes and sketches of the tunnel, detailing various paranormal occurrences. Suddenly, the lanterns began to flicker more violently, and a cold wind swept through the room. We heard whispers all around us, but we couldn't understand what they were saying. Panic set in, and we ran back towards the gate, but it slammed shut behind us. We were trapped. The whispers grew louder, turning into incoherent shouts. The room felt like it was closing in on us. Desperate, we searched for another way out. Megan found a small hidden passage behind one of the lanterns. We squeezed through, crawling on our hands and knees until we emerged into another tunnel. The whispers faded, but we didn't stop running until we saw the faint light of the tunnel entrance. We burst out into the cool night air, gasping for breath. We never looked back as we ran all the way home. We never spoke of that night again, and we never returned to those tunnels. Some places are better left unexplored, and the horrors we encountered beneath the city are best left forgotten.